In the text accountability group that I'm a part of, that I've mentioned before, where we've been reading through several books of the Bible, we're just finishing the book of Colossians. And in Colossians chapter 4 and verse 2, Paul says, "Devote yourselves to prayer, keeping alert in it with an attitude of thanksgiving." And it got me to thinking about, what does it mean to devote yourself to prayer? And I think sometimes we get the idea that that's for people who are going to live kind of a monastic lifestyle. They're going to go off into the desert, they're going to go off into their little house, they're going to go off into their prayer closet, and that is going to be all they do. That means being devoted to prayer. But Paul's commands and directions before that all have to do with how we do our work, how we raise our children, how we relate to those who are in authority over us. So these directions are being written to people who have lives that don't just involve going off on a mountain somewhere and praying all the time. But I think devoting ourselves to prayer means making it a priority. And often, I have said, you may have said the same thing, all we can do is pray when faced with a very dire situation, as if that's like the worst thing that you can do or the least thing that you can do, but in this situation, it's all I can do. But I read a couple of quotes that kind of help us refocus on what prayer really is. This first one has been attributed to several people. John Bunyan was one, but I can't verify that. It says, "You can do more than pray after you have prayed, but you cannot do more than pray until you have prayed." That's the priority. We can pray and then do things that can be done, but the praying is the most important thing. Oswald Chambers said, "Prayer does not fit us for the greater work. Prayer is the greater work." And too often we relegate prayer to the background while we try and do the work. We try and get things done. We try and fix the problems. We try and come up with solutions. And then finally, Martin Luther said this: "Prayer is not overcoming God's reluctance, but laying hold of his willingness." Sometimes we come to prayer with that idea that God is up in heaven and he wants to see us grovel. He wants to see us just beg, and he's really stingy. But if we bother him enough, he might let us have what we want. But we see over and over in the Gospels where people were calling out to Jesus for various things, and he would often ask them, what do you want me to do for you? And they would say things like, "If you're willing." And there are a number of times where he said, "I am willing." I think we need to remember that we have a God who is willing. And that's why he calls us to devote ourselves to prayer, to make that a priority in our lives, to not think of it as an afterthought, to not think of it as that's what we do when we throw up our hands because we can't do anything else. But that's what we do as a first step, as a first action. And anything else after that can be maybe a lesser work. But certainly those things should be hand in hand. We should pray and act, but we shouldn't forget the praying part.